everyone. I'm Paige Smith with After School, a podcast project from Simon Fraser University's Faculty of Communication, Art, and Technology. After School showcases FCAT alumni in traditional and unconventional career paths across communications, interactive art and technology, contemporary arts, publishing, and digital media. We would like to respectfully acknowledge the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Kwikwetlem, X၀məθkʷəy, Kwantlen, Semiahmoo and Tsawwassen peoples whose unceded traditional territories our three campuses reside. In today's episode of After School, our student host, Amena Salman from SFU's School of Interactive Art and Technology, is joined by alumna Sofia Bautista. They discuss Sofia's work as a product manager and how she was able to combine her passion for design with business and technology. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Coming from a design training really helps you figure out what it takes to fully flesh out a project or a product in general. And when designers and developers are busy building the thing, someone has to think about what to build.
Hello, everyone. Here we have Sofia Bautista. Sofia is a graduate of FCAT, of course, and is currently the head of product at Legible. And we'll be kind of talking more about her experience, kind of graduating from FCAT and coming into more of an unconventional path that most FCAT students might not take. But without further ado, I'll let her better introduce herself. So go ahead, Sofia.
Yes. Hi, I'm Sophia, and my pronouns are she, her, and I graduated from FCAT in October of last year. I did not finish the degree with 4 years, just a disclaimer. It took me 5 years, and I worked at least 3 out of the 5 years in co-op, getting to where I am today, which is I started out as a designer, and then I realized that I loved talking to stakeholders more, doing those interviews that we get taught in third year, and loved that part, and found my way to product management.
Awesome. So kind of getting into, we're gonna go real way back into kind of high school, and when you were kind of finding FCAT, what was that? What were you, did you know about FCAT? Is this what you wanted to do?
Yeah, funny story. So I had a very convoluted path to FCAT. So I applied, so I wanted to become an engineer in high school, and just wanted to get into a very STEM-oriented field. I came from an Asian household. You had to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. So I chose the engineer path.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did not do so well in my physics and calculus courses. So I was thinking, okay, I actually just want to work in technology. So I heard that majority of the technology field consisted of programmers or software developers. So I actually applied to SFU, to the computer science program. And then my second choice was cognitive science.
Oh, okay.
Because it had that psychology component to it. And my mom was a psychology graduate. So she thought, if you're not sure, just combine two of your favorite things. So I'm like, okay, so I did my first year of computer science at SFU. I loved my programming courses, but again, I did not do so hot in calculus. So at the end of my first year, summer of 2015, I was like, okay, what should be my next step? So I took half FCAT courses. I think it was 102 and 100, and the other half criminology, because I wanted to see that lawyer path that my mom was had that option. Maybe, yeah. And obviously I fell in love with the introductory 100 courses, and then that it stemmed from there. But then I also wanted to add in my love for just communicating, and I love the idea of like listening to people and seeing how kind of the stories that they tell. So I added a joint major in communications on top of my SCIAT major.
Wow.
And yeah, the rest was history.
Okay, wow. So you like took many paths and like tried everything out in university and kind of came to concluded at SCIAT. That's really cool.
That's right.
And so it was a minor or a major in communication?
It was the joint major program. Yep. And I did the Bachelor's of Science in SCIAT.
Wow, you're so cool. You like tried everything out. I love that. Yeah, I mean, like university is all about trying, like kind of dipping your toes into different waters and like figuring out what it is for you. So like now that you're in SCIAT, what was your experience like? So you mentioned that you did 3 co-ops. So what kind of co-ops were you doing? Like what were you kind of like thinking about while you were in SCIAT about like potential career paths and things like that?
Right. So I remember vividly that, Stephanie, our co-op advisor, like would talk to first years and say, apply to co-op as early as you can. And that was, second year. Mm-hmm. So I got my first year stuff out of the way. I took 235. I thought that was very critical to take before I, go out into co-op, because the majority of the roles that I wanted to apply for was something along the lines of either design or front-end web development. Mm-hmm. So I think I applied to like RBC, all the banks, Canadian Tire. And then I took a chance at applying for a company here in Richmond, Evidence Point Software, which is now part of Pressreader, also in Richmond. And I heard a lot about Evidence Point through my TA for 235, which is, I think, Veronica Wu. Yeah. So she was a previous design co-op from Evidence Point, and now she's at LinkedIn. Yeah. And she, like, before I applied, I asked her, like, oh, what was your kind of experience? We met up for, I think it was bubble tea or coffee. I don't remember. And she kind of gave me the lowdown, like, oh, it's an amazing experience. It's a really good, like, springboard if you haven't done co-op before, if you want to, apply to, like, bigger companies after graduation. So I'm like, okay. I'll apply. And then I did the interview, and I got the co-op job. What I didn't realize was I ended up staying there for 3 co-op terms, and then I ended up working there for the rest of my degree as a program manager. So those 3 co-op terms, I was mainly a UX designer developer. But then I stayed there long enough where they wanted me to kind of go into a managerial position. So I started out hiring other UX co-ops and kind of starting up the design team there. And then eventually I expanded on not just, leading design teams, but also leading a product launch. I think it was at the time I tackled Textbook Hub. It was the partner that we had in the US for K-12 schools, e-textbooks, working with publishers and working with developers, getting the product out there. So yeah, and then I eventually, after I graduated, I wanted something new to tackle. So I went on to Legible as a product manager, and now as head of product.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to assume that like your experience at your co-op at Evident was like the turning point of like, this is maybe design, like the actual design work isn't the thing, but maybe more of a managerial role. So like, what was that kind of like? Because obviously you're still in school at this point when you're co-op terms, still learning about design and all of that. So where did that kind of change come from? And like, it obviously like led into it, but you're not doing something that's related to kind of what your degree is, right? Like ended up with.
Yeah, there was definitely a point where I would think I was in 4th or 5th year when I started to realize that not a lot of the stuff I was learning anymore was directly applying to what I was doing every day when I would go to work. But I still saw the value of knowing about how kind of how important design was in the software development lifecycle and the product lifecycle in general. So that's how I kind of still got into the zone of like, okay, FCAT is still important. The courses I'm still taking is still very important. And I think in terms of the courses I took, I definitely saw the collecting the requirements, the project criteria. I think a lot of our third and fourth year classes really emphasize the idea of planning at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I know the programming classes, they always say, what are your milestones? What deliverables do you want to submit during these milestones? And I really enjoyed that part. And it kind of, that kind of clicked where that is the everyday job of a product manager. And it made sense why I like that more than the actual project work itself.
Brushed briefly on it with like the organizational structure of the milestones of it, but can you kind of explain what an average day looks like for you as a project, like head of product manager?
So a lot of product management, there's a common diagram that I see that pops up every once in a while on LinkedIn and on tech Twitter, and it's this like triple Venn diagram of UX, business, and technology. Mm-hmm. And then the intersection of it is that's where the product management kind of sphere lies, is that you're kind of the glue between those three different subject areas. And you have to be knowledgeable in all three in order to become a product manager. So that would be kind of the knowledge going in, like every day that you're required to have, but majority of the day is just meetings. It's oftentimes 9 to 5. Even before I was like head of product leading, other designers, other product managers, as a product manager myself, 9 to 5, it was just back-to-back meetings, except like 1 hour between 12 to 1 for lunch. Because oftentimes you're just connecting two people together and trying to facilitate conversation or requirements gathering or discovery or an interview. And this would be either it'll extend from like a 30-minute, catch-up session to like a 3-hour discovery workshop with stakeholders. So it's just variations of those every day. And then typical project methodology, whether you're agile company or a waterfall company, you have certain ceremonies that you have to follow to just keep the project going. So majority of software companies are agile. So oftentimes the product managers are responsible to be the scrum masters as well. So daily stand-ups in the morning with the development teams, the design teams. If a sprint is starting, you have to do sprint planning, backlog grooming, and then at the end of the sprint, you have to do retrospectives and then planning for the next sprint all over again. So that's really just, my everyday as a product manager.
Someone as a fellow organization nerd, like it just like makes me like all excited to hear about all the things we're doing. For students, because you obviously didn't end up in that conventional like FCAT path, become a designer, become like an animation media artist type of thing. What advice would you give to students who kind of aren't following that unconventional path? Because there's always like this kind of stress, and when you're job searching and everything, it's like, I'm not doing anything related to my degree. Like, what's the point of like all of like the past 4 or 5 years that I've spent? Like, what advice would you give to a student kind of in that position right now, where they're kind of maybe like they're applying for jobs that aren't part of their degree, or like they're like kind of like having those thoughts, like maybe I should do this?
I would say to try to explore other extracurricular activities while you're at SFU as much as you can. I mean, although I didn't really get a chance to do that because I was just absorbing myself in work. I know, like, I regret not taking part into like case competitions, hackathons, and all of that, where I really like, I volunteer at those events now as kind of a mentor, but as a participant, I witnessed that it really shows what different skill sets can come out of like a student. And sometimes it really clicks there where, there's just some people that are really good at design and pixel pushing, and there are some developers who really understand the ins and outs of JavaScript or Ruby. And then there's the remaining person. And that's really that person that should step up to become that, product manager or business analyst or researcher. And coming from a design training really helps you figure out what it takes to fully flesh out a project or a product in general. And when designers and developers are busy building the thing, someone has to think about what to build.
Right.
And like a designer and developer in a professional environment can't do both. And that's why there's that particular business-oriented person. But there is a lack, and which is why I want to speak about this today. There is a lack of product managers who have that design training. Oftentimes, product managers, at least the ones that I've been hiring, come from a marketing or business background. And it's been a difficulty trying to get them up to speed to understand, like, the design process is an iterative, cyclical process. It requires a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of work involved to just produce mock-ups. It isn't something fast like developers can whip up. It takes time, and it's been difficult trying to kind of like see eye to eye with the classical training that product managers have in business, where they're all just thinking about the hypotheticals, but don't really have an understanding. Okay, this is what a designer does every day. So yeah, I think it's definitely important for, I think CET has an opportunity there with what they teach to just go out into the world and be able to apply what we've learned to no matter the field.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that in my conversations with other students. I remember during co-op, we would have those meetings, and a lot of the students would talk about is it's a lot of me just trying to explain as a designer what I'm doing to the project, the managers and things like that, because they don't recognize, and they tend to have to lead workshops to show this is a very slow process. It's a very insightful process and it takes time. So yeah, definitely. I think you're very correct. It's really nice to have project managers who understand the developing side and the designing side. So yeah, I think that's really cool. And I'm glad that you talked about it, because it's so important. Once you get into the job field, you recognize it and you're oh my gosh, they're not understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So kind of talking about more of your career path, so you've kind of evolved into this project manager role, and you're obviously very young. You still have a whole career ahead of you. So what's kind of your future stepping stones? Where do you want to see this role or kind of career for you develop into?
Right. So right after I graduated last year, I was kind of in a limbo state where should I just keep working at product management and learn on the field, or should I pursue some further learning? Should I attend a boot camp or something? So what I ended up doing is I ended up applying to a business school to get my master's in management, to kind of be able to supply my street knowledge about product management with more theoretical understanding, because like SEAT, although, I think there's that business entrepreneurship program that started up the certificate. I wasn't in that, so I didn't really get the foundational business concepts. So, that was my next step. I'm still in that step today. I'm still trying to complete that master's. And then after that, I think that would kind of open up more opportunities for senior leadership, senior directorship in leading other product teams. I love working at Legible, and I see myself, working there for as long as I can. But there's also kind of a limit, I think, at our company where we're trying to only have 140 employees as we grow, because it's a startup. We don't want to be that, super mega corp with like 5 locations across the world with like 300 employees each.
Right.
So I definitely want to be in that role, like, seeing how many departments can I have under my grasp, I guess. It may seem like a lot of responsibility going out of like 2 years out of school, 3 years out of school. But it's just, I was talking earlier with our HR person earlier, and I've kind of realized that it's okay for me to kind of stay stagnant in my skills as a designer, my skills as a front-end developer, and be able to foster the growth of other designers, other developers, other product managers. And I can sit back and make sure that happens, and also tackle problems that they shouldn't have to deal with.
Right. Yeah, I think that's like a real, like, kind of the idea of like staying stagnant in the skills that you've been learning, and like kind of growing other people's skills while not growing yours. It's like it feels like kind of like you're like neglecting yourself, but you're kind of growing in a different direction. And I think that's really, really cool of you to kind of like help foster other people's direction, and like while you grow into a different one. So this is kind of like going back into your SEAT career, your time at university in your undergrad, and I think it kind of relates to you now, where you were working like part-time, almost like full-time, while managing like school and your degree. And I think you're still doing that as you mentioned, you're taking your master's. So like, I just want to know, like, how do you manage so much? Because you're doing like full-time work and full-time school, and that's a lot. How do you like find that balance between the both? Because I know a lot of students might be in that position as well.
Right. So, for me, it started out in high school where I was trying to raise money for SFU. And so I was like completing my high school courses and also working at the same time. It was, any high school job. It was customer service, retail.
Yeah.
And I kind of laid down the foundations of kind of the work-life balance to be able to, do okay in school. I wasn't the best student, both in high school and in SEAT, but also be able to have the energy to work and, earn money. So one thing is having good delineation between, when does work start and begin, and when does studying stop and begin as well. So with shift work, which is, sometimes it goes into university, you have a set number of hours where you're expected at work, and you should only think about work then. I know it's hard to kind of think about, okay, I have a test tomorrow. I can kind of remember the note cards that I wrote down and like try to like do the memorization. But that only just kind of mentally tires you out. So you should just be focusing on work during those hours. And then when you get home, make sure that you take advantage of that limbo state of kind of resting, grab a drink, have a snack. Make sure that your body feels nourished after like the workday. Catch up with your family, your pet, whatever. And then once you kind of feel satisfied with that, then you kind of go into your studying mode. You kind of close the door. I would like block all the social media sites. I would put on a good studying playlist and just I would write out all my notes until I was like kind of tired. Obviously, I would welcome distractions. Like I would get like messages from friends, like texts and whatnot. Like, hey, can you like come over this week or whatever? And I don't totally block that out. I entertain them. And then, once that's settled, now that I don't have to procrastinate reaching out to that person after I'm finished studying. So, once I feel satisfied, okay, I've finished these mocks, I've gone through these terms, you kind of make sure that you've done something. It doesn't matter what you completed, as long as you completed something, that's what matters. I know there's like this whole idea about like set a goal for yourself and whatnot, but I think it makes this unhealthy idea of like, what if you did not complete your goal that day, like of completing this thing, and it just makes you feel really shitty about yourself.
Yeah.
So I really just love the idea of just completing something, and then you go back to sleep and then you do it all over again.
Yeah.
Now the one thing about not thinking about school during work, I'm definitely guilty of thinking about work while I was at school. So there would be lots of times during a lecture that I would be like on Slack, like just messaging my coworkers because I'm at school during work hours, so I'd be answering questions, I'd be sending out like emails and documents, and then all of a sudden it's like a breakout activity, and I'm like, oh no, I wasn't listening. And I mean, I would catch up because I just prepare that the readings, make sure you do them, and then that way you kind of can tune out during the lectures. But that's one thing I wanted to talk about is like, if you ever had that person in your group project, like it seemed like they weren't listening or doing anything, just to be mindful and understanding that, they might have had a shitty amount of sleep last night, or they're working a job like half the time they're at a school. So just to be understanding of your classmates, because again, you're all in it together. You're probably going to be graded together. So just, to be mindful of that, that we're balancing these things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. Like we end up like having overlapping, like everything, all the responsibilities on top of each other, especially with like being so easily accessible by work or like by student or like group projects and things. Like you can get so distracted so easily. So maybe like making sure that you like compartmentalize like each aspect of your life and kind of keep it separate just so it doesn't muddle through. And I definitely agree with you, like especially as a CAT student, like making sure that your group's well-being comes first, and making sure that you're that more understanding and like of what's happening with every member, rather than just like jumping to conclusions and assumptions, because that's definitely going to make your group just work and flow 1,000 times better.
Yep.
One thing I always like to talk about is time to reminisce on your time at CAT. What is your most favorite / like standout memory when you think about your time at CAT?
I would say, it might seem cliche, but I think it's also the quintessential CAT experience is if you've ever stayed late hours at the studios. I think it was our interaction design class. We took it with Will Odom. And my group we really loved the client that we chose. It was the Surrey Art Gallery. And we just wanted to make sure that, the insights that we gathered from the, I think either the curator of the foundation at the time, really kind of spoke through our presentation, our prototypes, and everything, and that what we were building was exactly what they wanted. So we spent like until like 4 a.m. in one of the studios one night, and this was like the night before the final presentation, and we knew we were like not productive, but we managed to like get out what we needed to submit, and we were satisfied with what we were doing, and we kind of closed our laptops. We kind of headed out. It was like winter time, so it was freezing outside. And the fact that we had to be on campus like 2 hours later was like lingering in our mind. But at least we felt very accomplished, and we didn't put anything off. We didn't leave anything out. And, you know, I think we did a good job presenting. We got an okay grade. But what mattered to us is the fact that, you know, our client was actually happy with what we produced. And yeah, that was my favorite memory of FCAT.
Yeah. I usually like to end our conversations with a little fun, quirky question.
Okay, sure.
So my last little question is, what is like a kids movie that completely scarred you, that has like traumatized you to this day? For me, it's like, I don't know if you know the book Roald Dahl, The Witches. They made a movie version of it, and it had like the real 90s like graphics, and there's a scene where all the witches gather. She like takes off her mask, and I like, oh my God, that traumatizes me to this day. Wherever I see like, it's just so weird, a group of like women at like a conference, I just get like flashbacks to that scene. It's bad. It's like, I probably should not be afraid of it as much as I am. So what is it for you?
For me, it was any of the insect-related movies. So, A Bug's Life, the Bee Movie, as a kid, because it just personified insects. And coming from a tropical country, we love to like just swat like insects and like, you know, kill them. But that gave insects like a life and a soul to me as a kid. So then whenever my dad would like, you know, kill a spider, kill like a cockroach, I'll be like, you know, that insect probably had a soul, and, you know, he just died. And so I could never really watch those movies since, because otherwise it would be hard to like separate my perspective.
He has a wife out there, you know what I mean? He has a wife. Like, what am I supposed to know?
That's right. Like, they probably have like friends. They have a colony. Like, and then you're executing some worker, part of that colony, just because it's like a nuisance to you.
Yeah, that poor insect is a slave to its own insect capitalism, and you're just hurting him.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the episode, please let us know by following us on Spotify or reaching out to us on our Instagram at SFU. Other than that, we'll catch you in this video next time.
After School is a podcast project from Simon Fraser University's Faculty of Communication, Art, and Technology. This has been our conversation with Sofia Bautista, hosted by Amena Salman. The After School podcast is created by Tessa Arsenault, Emma Keeler-Dugas, Stacey Copeland, myself, Paige Smith, and each of our student hosts. You can learn more about SFU's Faculty of Communication, Art, and Technology at our website, sfu.ca/FCAT. And you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn with our handle FCAT@SFU. That's FCAT@SFU. You can learn more about SFU's School of Interactive Art and Technology at sfu.ca/SIAT. And you can follow them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at SIATSFU. Next time on After School, we'll be hosting a conversation with Mars Balasakin, a producer and game designer with 20 years of experience, who just recently graduated from our Education Consortium Collaboration Program, Master of Digital Media at the Center for Digital Media. Make sure you subscribe to After School on your podcasting app of choice so you don't miss this great conversation. See you next time.